Most people believe retirement is about what you finally get to hold on to. Over the years, I've come to see it differently. Retirement is really about what you're smart enough to release before you arrive there. I've watched this story repeat itself for decades. Two people reach retirement with nearly the same amount of money. One feels relaxed, adaptable, and confident. The other feels trapped, uneasy, and shocked by how quickly life starts to feel expensive. The difference usually isn't how much they earned. It's the choices they made years earlier. Retirement doesn't punish people who didn't make enough money. It punishes people who held on to the wrong things for too long. Today, I want to walk you through 5 things you should seriously consider selling, or consciously letting go of, before you retire. Not because these things are mistakes, but because timing matters, just like it does in investing. This isn't about fear. It's about clarity. And clarity may be one of the most valuable assets you can carry into retirement. Let's begin with the first. 1. The house that no longer matches your life. For many Americans, the family home represents achievement, stability, and years of sacrifice. I understand that completely. But I've also seen that pride slowly turn into attachment. And attachment can be costly. A home is only an asset if it supports the life you're living now, not the life you lived 20 years ago. I've met retirees living in 4-bedroom houses with empty rooms they never step into. Yet they continue paying property taxes, insurance, heating, cooling, and maintenance for space that no longer serves a purpose. They often say, "We might need it when the grandkids visit." But the grandkids come twice a year, for a few days at most. Let me share a real example. I once knew a couple in suburban Chicago who kept their 3,200 square foot home for 7 years after their youngest child left for college. Their property taxes alone were around $14,000 per year. When you added homeowners insurance, utilities, lawn care, snow removal, and ongoing repairs, they were spending nearly $30,000 annually just to maintain a house they barely used. At the same time, they felt constant financial pressure. They hesitated to travel because they worried about leaving the house unattended. They postponed medical treatments because they weren't confident about their cash flow. All of this while sitting on nearly $450,000 in trapped home equity. When they finally sold and moved into a thoughtfully designed townhome closer to their daughter, everything changed. Their yearly housing costs dropped to about $18,000. They invested over $400,000, which began generating income. But more importantly, they stopped worrying about furnaces, roofs, gutters, and yard work. They stopped maintaining a house, and started enjoying their life. Selling at the right time, before health issues, mobility challenges, or market pressure force your decision, puts you back in control. This doesn't mean downsizing just to save money. It means choosing a home that supports daily ease. Fewer stairs, closer access to healthcare and services, lower maintenance, lower fixed expenses. For some, that means a condo near restaurants and medical care. For others, it's a single-story home in a warmer climate. The key is intentionality. I've seen people improve both finances and relationships by moving closer to adult children. Others relocate to states with lower taxes and better weather, reducing both financial and physical strain. Action step. Imagine you're buying your retirement home today with fresh eyes. Write down the 5 features you truly need for the next 20 years. Then compare that list honestly to the home you live in now. If they don't match, it may be time to sell while you still have choices. 2. Investments you don't truly understand. I've always believed that real risk comes from not knowing what you're doing. That belief doesn't change with age, but the consequences do. When you're young, time forgives mistakes. If you're 35 and your portfolio drops 40%, you have decades to recover. In retirement, time becomes far more valuable. Market volatility hits harder because withdrawals are happening at the same time prices are moving up and down. I've seen retirees cling to speculative stocks, private investments, leveraged real estate, or complex financial products simply because they performed well in the past. But past success creates emotional attachment, not future safety. I once met a man who invested $80,000 in a technology stock in the early 2000s. By 2021, it had grown to $320,000. He was proud of that win. He talked about it often. When the stock began declining in 2022, he held on, convinced it would rebound like it always had before. By the time he retired in 2024, that investment had fallen to $140,000. He needed the money for living expenses and was forced to sell at a loss. What made it worse was that he didn't fully understand the company's fundamentals. He wasn't holding based on knowledge, but on emotion. Here's the truth. Retirement isn't the phase of life to prove how smart you are. It's the phase where you protect what already works. That doesn't mean eliminating growth. It means prioritizing investments that preserve capital, generate income, and are easy to explain. If you can't clearly explain why you own an investment without using jargon, that's a warning sign. I've seen retirees improve stability by shifting part of their portfolio into dividend-paying stocks, high-quality bonds, and broad index funds. One retiree I know moved 40% of his portfolio into income-producing assets, bonds, REITs, and dividend aristocrats, while keeping the rest in diversified stock funds. That balance gave him peace without sacrificing growth. Action step. Write a one-sentence explanation for every investment you own. If you can't confidently explain why it belongs in your portfolio, consider simplifying. 3. The habit of delaying important decisions. Procrastination doesn't feel dangerous when you're earning a steady paycheck. It feels comfortable. But as retirement approaches, delay becomes expensive. I've seen people avoid retirement planning because it feels overwhelming. They don't want to think about healthcare costs, taxes, or income timing. So they say, I'll deal with it later. Later arrives quickly. I once knew a teacher who planned to retire at 65. She had a pension, savings, and social security ahead of her. But she never calculated how those pieces fit together. After retiring, she discovered her pension had no cost of living adjustment. She underestimated Medicare premiums and healthcare costs, which averaged about $6,000 per year. She also failed to consider the tax impact of withdrawing from her retirement account while her pension income was still high. Within 18 months, she was working part-time, not by choice, but out of necessity. 6 months of planning beforehand could have changed everything. Retirement doesn't organize itself. It rewards people who engage early and make adjustments while they still can. Action step. Schedule one focused planning session within the next 2 weeks. Write down your expected income, fixed expenses, and flexible spending. The numbers don't need to be perfect. Writing them down creates clarity, and clarity reduces anxiety. 4. Spending that no longer brings real joy. Many people don't realize how much of their spending is driven by habit, stress, or convenience. While working, income hides inefficiency. In retirement, inefficiency becomes obvious. I've seen retirees maintain expensive cars they rarely drive, subscriptions they never use, and lifestyle costs designed for a working schedule, not a retired one. I once knew a couple who owned 2 vehicles. Between payments, insurance, and maintenance, they were spending nearly $1,400 per month. After retiring, they realized they almost never drove separately. One car sat unused for weeks. They sold the second vehicle, freeing up nearly $17,000 per year. They used that money to travel, visit family, and enjoy experiences they truly valued. Their quality of life didn't decline, it improved. The happiest retirees spend generously on what matters and eliminate what doesn't. Action step. Track your spending for 1 month. Ask one question of every expense. Did this actually improve my life? If not, let it go. 5. The belief that your job is your identity. This may be the hardest one to release. Many people are financially prepared for retirement, but emotionally unprepared. They don't miss the paycheck. They miss the purpose. I once met a corporate executive who retired after 30 years. His finances were solid. His health was good. But within 6 months, he felt lost. When he began volunteering and mentoring small business owners, everything changed. He had purpose again. Selling this belief means redefining value. Your worth doesn't disappear when your job title does. Action step. Before retiring, write down 3 ways you want to contribute after work ends. Not hobbies. Contributions. Closing. Retirement isn't one big decision. It's the result of many small choices made well in advance. Letting go of the right things creates space, financially, mentally, and emotionally. The people who thrive in retirement aren't the ones with the most money. They're the ones who released what no longer served them while they still had the freedom to choose. there's something else I've noticed over the years, and it's subtle, but powerful. Most people don't struggle in retirement because of one bad decision. They struggle because of many unexamined ones. No single choice breaks them. It's the accumulation. And retirement has a way of revealing things you could once afford to ignore. When you're working, money problems are often masked by income. You're busy. You're distracted. You tell yourself you'll fix things later. But retirement removes the noise. That's when clarity arrives, whether you're ready for it or not. Why letting go is actually a skill. Letting go isn't weakness, it's judgment. In investing, knowing when to sell is just as important as knowing when to buy. The same applies to life. Holding on to something past its usefulness doesn't make it valuable. It makes it heavy. I've met people who carried financial weight they no longer needed, simply because they were afraid of change. But what they didn't realize is that change is coming either way. The only question is whether you choose it, or whether it chooses you. Selling earlier gives you options. Waiting too long removes them. Retirement is a season of simplicity, or stress. The retirees who thrive are rarely the ones with the most complicated lives. They simplify their finances, their schedules, their obligations, not because they have to, but because they want to. They understand something important. Energy becomes more valuable than money as time goes on. Every unnecessary responsibility drains energy. Every complicated system creates friction. That's why the best retirements are designed, not improvised. The cost of complexity. I've seen retirees juggling multiple checking accounts, old credit cards, scattered investments, unclear beneficiaries, outdated insurance policies. They tell themselves they'll organize it someday. But complexity creates confusion, and confusion creates stress. One retiree I knew passed away unexpectedly. His finances were strong, but poorly organized. His wife spent months entangling accounts, paperwork, and decisions she'd never been involved in. It wasn't the money that caused the pain. It was the lack of simplicity. Selling complexity before retirement, consolidating accounts, simplifying investments, updating documents, is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself and your family. Why cash flow matters more than net worth. Another lesson many people learn too late is this. Net worth looks good on paper. Cash flow determines how life actually feels. You can be asset rich and cash poor. And in retirement, that imbalance creates anxiety. I've met retirees with impressive balance sheets who still worried every month because their income didn't match their expenses. They had wealth, but not flexibility. Selling assets that don't generate income and redirecting that money into reliable cash flow often creates immediate peace of mind. Peace isn't about having more. It's about worrying less. The emotional side of money. Money decisions are rarely just about numbers. They're about fear, pride, identity, memory. That's why letting go can feel uncomfortable, even when it's logical. A home isn't just a structure. It's memories. A stock isn't just an investment. It's a win you're proud of. A job isn't just income. It's validation. But retirement asks a different question. What serves you now? Not what served you before. Not what impressed others. Not what you're used to. What supports the life you want today? Retirement rewards flexibility. One of the most underrated advantages in retirement is flexibility. The ability to travel when you want, adapt to health changes, help family without stress, handle unexpected expenses calmly. Flexibility doesn't come from holding on to everything. It comes from creating margin. Margin in time, margin in money, margin in energy. Selling the right things creates that margin. Why early action feels uncomfortable, but pays off. Most people delay change because early action feels unnecessary. They say, I'm fine for now. I'll think about it later. There's no rush. But the best decisions are rarely urgent. They're proactive. Selling a house before you must. Simplifying investments before volatility forces your hand. Redefining purpose before boredom sets in. Early action feels uncomfortable, because it requires honesty. But it replaces panic with choice. Retirement is not an end. It's a transition. I've never believed retirement is about stopping. It's about shifting. You shift. From accumulation to preservation. From complexity to clarity. From proving to enjoying. People who view retirement as an ending often struggle. People who view it as a transition tend to flourish. That transition works best when you enter it lighter, not burdened by things you no longer need. What the calmest retirees have in common. When I look at retirees who are genuinely content, I notice patterns. They know their numbers, live below their means, value time over status, prioritize health and relationships, keep life simple. They're not immune to challenges. They're prepared for them. Preparation is quiet, but its effects are powerful. The final shift in thinking. There's a mindset shift that marks the difference between financial stress and financial peace. It's this. You stop asking, "Can I afford this?" and start asking, "Does this serve the life I want?" That single question changes everything. A message for your future self. Your future self doesn't need more things. They need fewer worries. They don't need complexity. They need clarity. They don't need perfection. They need preparation. Every thoughtful decision you make before retirement is a gift to the person you'll become later. And that person will thank you. Not with words, but with calm mornings, flexible days, and confidence when life changes. Final word. Retirement isn't won by those who hold on the longest. It's won by those who let go wisely. Let go of what no longer fits. Let go of what creates stress. Let go of what belongs to a past season. What remains will support you, quietly, steadily, and reliably. That's not just good investing. That's good living.